Be you.
Just be natural. Just be natural. Okay.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is a debut night. A debut night at Real Talk 100 Radio. This is a debut night. Debut means the first show of its kind that we know of on radio in Houston. It's an expose show. An expose. We have a young man sitting to my right here, who is very much, very much troubled by a death in his family that happened decades ago. Decades ago, and it was an unfortunate death in his family. It should never have happened. And he is here on Real Talk 100 Radio to shed light on that death via Real Talk 100 Radio. He wants to let the world know that it was wrong and he's not going to stand for it. It was his father. His father, his father's life was taken from him. His father was taken out of his life and his family's life, and it should have never happened. Fair warning, anybody who does not like racial tensions, this might not be the show for you. Now, we won't be on here, hurling names around and all of that kind of thing, but it is a black and white issue. There was a lot of racial tension back in the 70s.
Late 70s or early 80s?
Late 70s, early 80s, a lot of racial tension in America. We all know that. And that is when this murder happened. This is T.W. Brock. Y'all give him a follow. I'm going to let him take it away from here. He wants to let you know about Partners of Purpose. This is the Partners of Purpose show, the P.O.P show. You're going to have a call-in number if you've got questions for him. T.W. Brock, the founder of Partners of Purpose. This is an expose show on the Real Talk 100 Radio. T.W.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is T.W. Brock, and I come to represent my pop, William B. Brock. I want you guys to understand that Pop was birthed from the death of my father. Okay, my father was murdered standing up for the civil rights of other minorities like ourselves. Okay, when Volkswagen, the automobile company, opened their first plant right here in the United States, was in New Stanton, Pennsylvania, not far from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and there was a lot of racial tension. I mean, there was a lot of tumultuous times related to the black community right there at that plant. I mean, when I first learned about those things for myself, I was devastated. Okay, and here's the sad part, ladies and gentlemen. I never knew my father. Okay, so I want to be transparent with you. I want to open up to you and let you know that for decades, I thought another man was my father. When I found out the truth,
Hail to pay the captain.
Yes, sir.
Hail to pay the captain.
Hail to pay the captain.
We're looking at a young man who never knew his father, and he's still in pain decades later.
But see, here's the reason why I never knew my father. It wasn't because he didn't want to be a part of my life, because my father was amazing. This guy was a genius, but he wanted desperately to be a part of my life. Okay, my mother and father were dated when they were teenagers in high school. Okay, my mother was 15 when she got pregnant with me. I think my father was 16 when she got pregnant with me. And when they had me, they broke up. And my mother met another gentleman and blamed her pregnancy on that other gentleman. And that other gentleman thought that I was his son for so many years. When he found out the truth, when I was 10 years old, we were in the Philippines because he was in the Air Force. But he didn't tell me the truth until we got back to the United States when I was 16. When I found out the truth, at that point, I had to find out who my father was. So I moved from New York City back to Pennsylvania. And it was funny because I really didn't know where to begin.
Tonight? That's okay. That's okay, y'all. This is first night jitters. Just work your way through it. I do bloopers right here on the air. When we have our own show, like the other night, let me give you an example. This might light you up. My sense of humor might light you up. The other night, we had a show that we had a BBW on the show. You know what a BBW is?
No, sir.
A BBW is a big, beautiful woman. They call them that instead of fat or gross. Or
Gotcha.
They call themselves BBWs. They're big, and just because you're big, and you know you might, some people might call you overweight or whatever. They came up with the name BBW, big beautiful woman. Don't call me fat. Don't call me all of that. Call me a BBW, and they're proud of it. Okay, they're not ashamed of it. Okay. So the other night we had a BBW on the show, and I'm introducing them to the show, and I'm like, "Welcome tonight to the show. Tonight we're gonna have a BMW." And I just dropped my head, and everybody got a joke out of it.
I got you.
So don't be afraid of the camera. This is First Night Jitters. This is the show, Partners of Purpose. It's the Pop Show. And
the Pop Show.
This is T.W. Brock. I want to enlighten our listening audience right quick about what the show is about. And then I want you to get into the meat of it, okay?
Understood.
T.W. Brock, the son of a murdered father back in the 70s. His father was murdered.
83, actually.
In 83. His father was murdered in 83 by a major corporation. And he would like to shed some light to the nation. Stand up for the TW.
Certainly.
That is his message to the world. America, what?
Why do you kill your own?
Why do you kill your own? Because he thinks there was an elaborate scheme to cover up the murder of his father. So, TW, what led you to come up with this show? What led you to say, I want to expose that company. I want to get back to him. I want my father's legacy to live forever. What made you come to that conclusion?
Actually, over the years, after getting to know my family, after digging into my father's story itself, after discovering that all of the evidence led to homicide. You know, the fact that my father was left-handed and he was shot in the back of the right side of his head hours after joining a $70 million class action discrimination lawsuit where he himself had the bulk of the damaging information. Okay? The fact that 10 days before his death, he had a family meeting telling everyone in the family that he had just been approved for a $9 million venture. And that get this.
That's a lot of money in 83. Oh,
and today it's 54 million today. Okay, but get this. Not only did he tell his family that he had been approved for that $9 million, but he was telling everybody the different jobs that they were going to have in the workplace. On the day of the alleged suicide, he told a friend of his he was selling his Audi because he just bought a Porsche. Okay. He told other friends that he would see them at the meeting on Monday when he allegedly shot himself on a Friday. And then I guess the most disturbing thing was that through my research, I'd spoken with a Dr. Cyril Wecht. Now, I'm not sure if many of you have heard of Dr. Cyril Wecht, but Dr. Cyril Wecht is one of the best pathologists in the country. This man did work on the O.J. Simpson case, the Kennedy case, the Anna Nicole Smith case, Whitney Houston, and several other big major cases. So since he's such a well-known doctor, I actually sought him out. I called his office and I said, "Hey, have you ever dealt with suicide?" And he said, "Of course." I said, "Well, where do people generally tend to shoot themselves?" And he told me that men typically tend to shoot themselves in the mouth, under the chin, or in the temple. Okay. Women typically tend to shoot themselves in the heart because they want an open casket funeral. I asked him, "Are they really that vain?" He said, "You wouldn't believe." So when I asked him, has he ever dealt with a suicide case where a left-handed man shot himself in the back of the right side of his head, he said no. And at that point, he asked me, "What did the inquest say?" When I explained to Dr. Wecht, there was no inquest. There was a report, but no inquest. He said, "That sounds like foul play."
And this was Mr. Cyril who?
Wecht.
And Mr. Cyril Wecht was who?
He's one of the best, but it's actually Dr. Cyril Wecht. He's one of the best pathologists in the country.
Is he still alive?
To my knowledge, he is. He's retired, but he's still alive.
We need Mr. Cyril Wecht on the show.
I would love to have Dr. Cyril Wecht on the show. Now, Dr. Cyril Wecht is in Pittsburgh. So for those of you who are in Pittsburgh who are watching, reach out to him for me. Let's get him on the show. Okay.
Now, before I let you go again, I want you to be clear, be crystal clear with our listening audience. Outside of the pathologist,
Mm-hmm.
outside of what he thinks,
Mm-hmm.
what led you to believe, hey, I gotta go and study up on this because it don't sound right. Did you hear it through the grapevine that your dad was murdered? Did you think it was peculiar? Did you think it was odd? What made you go and study the story?
That's a great question. Actually, what made me go and study it was when I found out the truth about who my father was. That I was uh, told that he was that he shot himself, and I was led to believe, just like everyone else, that he had actually shot himself. But then when I relocated from New York City back to Pittsburgh, so that I could find out who my father was and how great this was, I really didn't know where to reach out and find my dad's family. But then one day, I was working at this burger joint, and I met this guy. He's about my age, and I said, "Man, you look familiar, dude. Where you from?" And he told me where he's from, and I don't know him from there. I said, "Where do you hang out?" He told me where he hung out. No, don't know where he's from there either. Then I said, "Well, what's your last name?" And he said, "My last name is Brock." I said, "You're kidding me." I said, "Did you ever have anybody in your family that worked for Volkswagen and went home and shot himself?" He said, "Yep." He said, "You're not gonna tell me you're my long lost brother, are you?" I said, "No, I'm not. I'm not." I said, "It depends on you how you're related to this gentleman." He said, "Well, that was my uncle." I said, "I'm not going to tell you I'm your long lost brother, but I'm definitely going to tell you I'm your long lost cousin." So we exchanged numbers, and from what I understand, his another one of his cousins was in town,
Okay.
and when he came home, he shared my number with them. They went home to their mother, and their mother says, "Oh, no, my brother didn't have any other kids. If he did, I would have known about it." And the son says, "Well, that Brock Jean is strong. Why don't you invite him over?" So my aunt Todd,
it sure is strong because you look just like your aunt. Just like her. I see a lot of you in her. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay,
So
let's introduce your guest for tonight.
So watch this. So then, from Aunt Todd calls me up. She's a little you can hear the disbelief in her voice. You claim to be my brother's son. I want to meet you. I said, "Okay, what's your address?" So I come over to the house and I knock on the door. I'm a little cocky. You see how skinny I am. To the audience, see how skinny I am. Well, her son, my cousin, too, he's a bodybuilder. So when I knocked on the door and he answered the door, "Hi, how you doing?" So he invites me in, and I walk through the door, and Aunt Tot is standing in the living room, and you wouldn't believe the look on her face. Her jaw dropped. She said, "Oh my God, who is your mother? You look more like my brother than his other children." Mm-hmm. And when I told her who my mother was, she said, "Boy, you were conceived on my couch."
Wow, they was being bad on the couch. That's why you look so much like it.
So Aunt Todd, I'd like to have you tell the story of, because I remember when I asked Aunt Todd, I said, "Why would he commit suicide?" And she said, "He didn't commit suicide, baby. He was murdered." And that's when she shared with me, when the compelling evidence and what made me, what inspired me to dig into my father's situation. And Todd, I'd like to bring you in. Tell the story.
Okay. Yes. I always heard from my brother that he had a child which had been lost. He searched for him for years. He hired one of the best detectives in the country, whose name was John Turner from Pittsburgh, and he had been looking for this child that was missing for a lot of years. Um, I even tried to encourage my brother to leave it alone. I said, and he said, "No, I can't leave it alone. This is my child, and I want custody of my child." And he never could find him. And so once TW came to my door and I looked at him and I saw him, I remembered who his mother was, who, you know, as a teenager, they used to babysit for me. My brother always used to ask me, Do you want me to babysit? And he would bring Charmaine there. Um, and I would go out. And that's why I said I know he was conceived on my sofa.
Good thing.
So, because my brother was, he was a young man and we were very close. We were very close. I think I was the closest person to Bill Brock on this earth because my mother died and he was 9 years younger than me. So I took him under my sleeve. So when that happened, my brother had been living with me, started living with me at age 16. And he was always over my house, always there. And he always went and got his girlfriend, who was Charmaine at the time. And so when he told me he had a child and he was looking for him, I felt very sad for him, but I thought, well, just let it go. She's not, maybe he isn't your child. But after I saw him, unfortunately, it was after my brother was dead that TW came to me and I looked at him and I almost fainted because he looked just exactly like my brother. He looked more like my brother than his other three children that you know he had. So, you know, about the suicide, that was really disturbing to me because we had meetings all the time. My brother did come into $9 million through some people to build to have a hotel in Washington, PA. So there was a meeting on December the 28th, and uh, my brother was dead on January, I believe it was the
eighth,
8th.
the 8th. Hmm.
And it was so shocking because, my brother was never suicidal. He was never. In fact, he told me that nothing could ever make him kill himself
Why would he tell you
because
that,
I
Todd?
was the one that threatened to commit suicide one time. And he drove from New Stanton all the way to my house in a like a short period of time. And he said, "How can you say that? What would make you ever say you're going to commit suicide?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just feeling bad. My marriage went down." He said, "Todd, don't ever say you're going to ever say you're going to commit suicide." He said, "Nothing would ever make me commit suicide. You remember how the pain when our mother died, and we had a brother that died previously." And I said, "Okay, all right." He said, he shook me real hard by the shoulders. "Don't ever say you would commit. Don't ever, ever." And it was really shocking the way he said nothing could ever, ever make me commit suicide. And, I remembered from our religious background, we were both raised Christians, and my parents forced us to go to church. We went to church like 3 or 4 times a week. And that was sort of engraved in us that if you commit suicide, you know, that's one sin that you can never be forgiven for. You know, if you read the Bible and if you would have heard the way my mother's pastor talked to us, he said, you know, that's something that you would never be forgiven for. But not only that, just before his death, he had threats on his life, and he would call me daily, telling me what this Jay Fruoff, that's what his name was, it at Volkswagen, that he said, "How would you like to be found dead behind the plant, the back of the plant?"
You know what, Anton? Watch this. Can I have you on the website? If you'll go to the website for me, and this is for for the audience that's watching with us. Okay, I'd really love you to go to the website with me on several different things, but it's justice for
Um,
spelled out
Wait a minute.
FOR.
Wait a minute. You want me to go on the
Spelled out.
website now
No, no,
while I'm
no.
talking to you?
We're doing it on the air. So if you, it's actually for FOR.
Okay, I'm not that
BROC.
technical savvy, so
No.
I don't know how to do that.
And Todd is live on air with for so the audience, the viewing audience can see it. So it's Justice for Brock, BROCK.com.
Wait a minute.
And then if you'll scroll down with me on the viewing audience to the blue link on the homepage there. Okay.
Wait.
And for those of you who are watching now, you'll see. I want an opportunity to show my followers and my audience why this thing is so important and why we got to get it out there. Okay. When my father died, they broke into his office and stole his briefcase. What they weren't aware of is that because threats were being made on his life, my father made copies of everything and distributed them to different members of the family. So all the threats that were made on his life, if you look at the blue link right there on that homepage, it says threats. Can you bring that second link right there on the homepage there, right next to the picture of him?
Wait.
Right here.
No, down. I'm looking at the one above. You see, it says recruited above it in that first paragraph, and then the second paragraph down, right next to the picture there, it says
Okay, let me look at it
threats.
because I can't read it.
Okay.
Let me see if I can.
This is some interesting stuff, ladies and gentlemen.
T.W. Brock is the son of
William Bryant Brock.
William Bryant Brock was who exactly?
William Bryant Brock was a young man who graduated high school at the age of 6. He was a genius. He graduated high school at the age of 16 with a 4.0 GPA.
What link?
So the second paragraph on the homepage there, come down some. Next one, that's the one that says recruited. There we go, threats. Grab that one for me.
They're gonna have to actually log in and read it because it doesn't show it very well on here.
Okay, but if they
can direct them to the
website on that link on that one that says threats, ladies and gentlemen, in the second page on the second paragraph, the last three sentences read verbatim. What could we do if, say, Charlie Scales was found dead with a bullet through the heart in the back of the plant? And if you scroll down to the very last page on that very link there, it says that letter, because my father was trying to protect himself. Okay, he made a copy of that letter and CC'd it to the U.S. Justice Department, the U.S. EEOC. James Short was the vice president of Volkswagen. Dr. Carl Hahn was the president of Volkswagen at the time. Bert Brown was the attorney for the VW Black Caucus. Yet there are court documents and newspaper articles from those days that say that Volkswagen said that they categorically denied threatening him. I'd like to know how they got away with perjuring themselves.
Let's slow down just a minute.
Yes.
For the sake of our listening audience.
Mm-hmm.
Why were they threatening him?
Because my father was recruited by Volkswagen in 1977 to clean up the racism at the initial plant here in the United States.
There you go. Let's touch on that. To clear up racism within the corporation.
Yes, sir.
That was his job.
Right. That's what they recruited him for. He didn't go to work for them. They actually sent a limo to his job, took him to dinner, made the offer.
Okay.
Okay.
Clear up racism.
Okay.
So here's a black man
Mhm.
going into a major corporation, probably a Fortune 500 listed corporation, and his job is to clean up the racism, clean up the effects of racism, clean up the existence of racism at this corporation.
Yes, sir.
Did he succeed?
He had begun to succeed.
Okay.
According to documents right there on the website.
Okay.
Okay. My father had succeeded in hiring 10% of the minorities at at that site. Um, he had stopped some of, and this is some of the homework that I've done. Okay. They would out and out call blacks the N-word to their faces. They used to hang black dolls from nooses at the plant. Okay, they would put dead rats and dead snakes, and all this stuff is public information. If you want to look it up, it was in the newspaper. The New York Times covered it back then. The Pittsburgh Courier covered it back then. The Pittsburgh Post Gazette covered it back then. So the Boston Globe covered it back then. Who else covered it back then, Todd?
New York Times. New York Times. It was mostly every paper that I know of covered the fact that it was, racism going rampant at Volkswagen.
Okay.
And the reason why I know that he was murdered was because he had taped a conversation at Volkswagen between two of the top officials telling each other how they would cover up this stuff that was going on. The tape was stolen by someone after his death, but he had sent me a copy of the tape. And it was, everything that they planned to do. So my brother told me that he had them. Because I asked him to leave Volkswagen right away because I know how a big corporation does. So he said he was going to leave after he had solved the case. But they told him if he let that tape out, you know, everything would be over. They wouldn't, do anything for the blacks. So he held the tape back and tried to make an agreement with them to go ahead and promote blacks, stop the racism, make promotions for the blacks that were there, and they would make big concessions. So my brother told them that, okay, if you promote blacks, if you stop this racism, to stop putting rats on minorities' desks, and do the right thing, I'm not going to bring out this tape. So they said, okay, we'll make a deal with you. We're going to let this thing, change. We're going to have administration make big differences at the Volkswagen plant. But the problem was there was a black caucus who really didn't trust Bill Brock. They thought, oh, why don't he just go ahead and go through for the lawsuit? And he told him, you're never going to get $70 million. So you need to take the promotions and the promises that they're making to make blacks on this plant have promotions, and we're going to make everybody calm down from sending rats and I mean, it was just horrible. The things that were on the desk. Bill talked to me about, and one time he actually cried because they told him that he was not like the other blacks there on the plant. So why is he worrying about them? They actually put him on a jet plane and sent him to Germany. And he met the head officials who were very, very impressed at Bill's, knowledge and the fact that he was a genius. He developed a invention that went on the Volkswagen car to make the car run better. So they tried to separate Bill Brock from the other blacks on the plant. They said, why should you care about them? What you're doing, you can move up. And he said, no, you know, I'm not that different, and I want to see that they get the same attention that the whites get here who don't have as much education and they're over top of them. In other words, they he racially tried to get them to promote, move the blacks up, give them the right uh, work that they were supposed to do. But what they did was they even tried to move Bill Brock out of the position that he was in because he was hiring too many blacks to them. When he called me, he said, wow, they even put me in another position so that I would not be hiring minorities anymore. And he didn't like that. He thought, they should have a fair chance. And they told him he was hiring too many black people. They didn't put it that way. They said, he's hiring too many people, and he needs to just worry about himself.
Right quick. I'd like to ask you something.
Yeah.
Not ask you something. I'd like to interject something right here. You said something that's very important to today's society, and it was going on, and I hear it all the time. I hear, this started back in the slavery days. And you just touched on it. You said that they told your brother that he wasn't like the other blacks. And that is a reason for a lot of the tension amongst blacks today.
Yes.
Because of that seed that was planted. We're not all the same, and we really are. But I get it. Some of us are on a higher level mentally and spiritually.
And and some of us let it go to our head.
Some of us let it go to our head. I get it, but it's funny how he was brought there to help blacks, help them get gainful employment, help better their lives by giving them good jobs, and then once they got him in position, they positioned him to take their jobs from them instead of giving them to them. Isn't that why they brought him in
the first place?
In the first place, and that the same problem exists today. They'll put a black man in power. They'll put a black man in power only to make him strike down other blacks.
They wanted him to be a token black. Like turn his back, and you're right. That's still happening today, and unfortunately, blacks do not stick together. They're the only race that I know of that does it together. Spanish people, whites, Asian, they all stick together.
Right.
And so the way we were raised, it was like you stick with your race, you stick with your family, keep your family together, keep your and if you rise up, pull others up behind you. I know I've done that all my life, but it's very painful because when you see one black person trying to help the others, and the ones that he's trying to help doesn't stick with them, because what they did was they went behind Bill Brock's back. This is the Black Caucus. And they filed the lawsuit, which left my brother hanging because they didn't stick with him.
And you know what?
He was their leader, but why wouldn't they listen to him? They thought that he was selling out. But what he was actually doing was, negotiating with Volkswagen to move the blacks up and to stop all this silly stuff that they were doing. Like every time my ex-husband was hired, he hired my ex-husband to work there. He hired every black person that applied that was able to do the work. He hired them. But the caucus formed, and they were scared to death, and they didn't trust my brother. They thought he was selling out, and so they went ahead right behind his back and filed the lawsuit, which put my brother's life in
And then Todd,
jeopardy.
I want to go ahead and interject right here, because through the homework and research that I've done over the years, when my father, when the other blacks filed the lawsuit, many of them weren't aware of the fact that, for those of you who are following along on the website, I admonish you, go to the website, go to the facts page. On the facts page, you'll scroll down to the blue link that says impact unfavorably. That's a letter that my father wrote to the president of Volkswagen about 4 months before he died. Okay. When he wrote that letter to the president of Volkswagen, he basically told them that, not only will we sue Volkswagen for its millions, but for the concession that it be required to cease and desist from building and or selling cars in the United States of America and be barred from ever doing so again as long as either shall exist. Now, you see, with those kind of threats, with that kind of promise to the company that, he worked in their personnel department initially, where he wrote the company's equal employment opportunity policy. So therefore, he knew they were breaking the law. Okay. He prior to going to work for them, he worked for the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission. So he knew the employment laws. So he knew what laws specifically they were breaking. In addition, he was running for mayor in the city in which he resided. And when I spoke to police officers right there in Washington County, Pennsylvania, told me, man, your father didn't commit suicide. He hired me. And this is coming from other officers, white and black. Okay. And because if you look at that letter, most people aren't aware of the fact that Volkswagen owns Audi, Porsche, Lamborghini.
I didn't know until you told me a couple weeks ago.
Bentley, Bugatti. That's a $19.5 million automobile for one vehicle. I mean, you sell 5 Bugattis, that's $70 million. He wasn't killed because of the $70 million. He was killed because he had enough information to put them out of business in the United States. That could have cost the company trillions of dollars. Trillions.
Now he was
right.
Let's enlighten the listening audience right quick. You're saying that he was killed. He was put in position to help the company, maintain their racial relations. Is that a fair statement?
Develop. And grow their positioning and their favor among the community.
Positioning, okay.
And I'd like to mention one thing right there. This wasn't the first attempt to kill him. A week before that, he had been drugged, and he told me that he was driving home. They had offered him a drink, and he drank it, and then on the way home, he started feeling really groggy and crashed into a wall. and this was just before the shooting. And he was lucky because he said, you know, somebody at Volkswagen drugged me because on the way home I fell asleep. And he was always a good driver, and so he was able to
Yeah,
crash,
that's where I
but
get it from.
he died from that crash. And he said, this is weird. How would I fall asleep, on the way home when I wasn't even sleepy, but I just crashed into the wall. But his life was saved then. And he called me. Do you know what, Todd? He said, I crashed into a wall. This is really weird. And I told him then, I said, you need to leave. They had tapes set up inside my brother's house, watching him and his wife have sex.
Mm.
That came out in the depositions. They watching everything he was doing. They had cameras inside his house. How did they get those cameras inside of his house? I don't know. That was very weird.
They,
But
they,
they
I,
knew they was watching everything he was doing. And
Well,
then,
I'd like to share one more thing, and then I'm gonna let Malcolm jump in. I remember
okay.
since maybe in the last 10, 15 years, because I've been researching this even still over the years still. Uh, for those who are following along on the website, on the homepage there's a blue link. It's actually one of my favorite links. It says recruited. The gentleman who my father wrote that letter to, I'll let you follow along on the website if you want to follow along. But I tracked him down. Court documents indicated that gentleman actually relocated to Shelby, Michigan. I tracked him down, called his house, and his wife answers the phone. I said, may I speak to such and such? And the wife says, Joe, honey, get the phone. So Joe grabs the phone, and I said, Joe such and such. He said, yep. I said, did you ever work for Volkswagen out in New Stanton, Pennsylvania? Oh, yeah, I worked there. He's all excited. And, I said, great. Just the guy I wanted to talk to him. Doing some research on my old man's death. And wanted to ask you a couple of real quick questions. You'd have thought this guy saw a ghost. I didn't know your father. I said, respectfully, sir, I didn't give you his name. His name was William Brock. I didn't know him. I said, I find that difficult to believe, considering I've got several letters my father had written to you. Several you had written back to him. I know you sat 3 desks away from him for 3 years. He was the only black man in the office, and you guys had several run-ins. And then he says to me, and I quote, I didn't kill him, but I didn't say anything about you killing him. And in law enforcement, that's called spontaneous utterance. So I'm kind of wondering, with all of this evidence and all of this proof, there was an alleged suicide note found near the body. I had the note analyzed by the same guy who analyzed the Zodiac killer's writing. He's one to prove in court it was forged, but we've got to get to court.
Okay. I was listening to you and lost train of thought. Let me get it back.
I'm sorry.
Let me get it back. I wanted to ask. Okay, I got my thoughts back. You guys were touching on your father being placed in a job, placed in a position at a major corporation. He was placed there to enhance racial relations.
Yes.
At this corporation. So after planting him in this position, explain clearly why they would then turn around and want to take his life from him.
Ouch. Maybe we should have. Come on.
Okay, do you want to take that to TW? Or let me
Well, I would just say, that because he had, I would think that it's been my experience that oftentimes when people sit in high positions, they think that they can have a token or someone who they can dictate, this is the way we want things done. My father wasn't that type of man. Just from the homework I've done, I recall when they had begun to make some leeway with the minority community when my father was all over the news for some of the things he had done over the years in that plant. You know, I guess if they think they can put you in a position and you'll fail, then the problem takes care of itself.
Okay.
But what if they put you in a position and you do well?
They want to kill you then.
Yeah, buddy.
Okay. So that's what you think.
That's my thought process.
On top is that
Tot. T-O-T.
Tot, do you?
They did not. Go ahead.
Come on, Tot.
I was just.
What I know to be a fact is, first of all, they did not want to hire Bill Brock. They were forced to hire Bill Brock because NAACP was complaining that this plant had been built, and they were hiring people and had not hired any blacks. The governor of Pennsylvania, Governor Shapp, appointed them to hire him because he was the best person to be hired. He had a track record that nobody could beat it. So he had worked like TW said, he had worked at the Mayor's Commission. He had been, and I had worked with him on the Human Relations Commission. So he knew all the laws. He knew everything. So when he got hired, they wanted him to be a token, just sit down minority to work there, but never get anywhere. So when he got to the plant, he started hiring people, and they didn't like it that he got so many minorities, women, even other, he hired whites too. He didn't just hire blacks. He was hiring everybody that was capable of doing the job at Volkswagen. And they didn't like it because he had been placed there against their will. NAACP were on them, the Mayor's Commission, Governor Shapp. And so he was put there against their will. They had to, they didn't really want him.
Okay.
But he had been placed there by the governor. So that tape that he had was a conversation when the guy that TW talked about, that he called and he said he didn't kill him. It was his tape with him talking and planning what to say so that they could eradicate Bill Brock. They wanted to get rid of him, and they was trying to figure out how they could do it. And my brother taped the conversation. He happened to, they have a phone system where if you answer the phone and you don't it's like intercom, and he happened to push on the right button where they were making that conversation. And he was like, wow, look what they're talking about. So he recorded them talking. And it was damaging, very damaging to them. So they not only wanted to get rid of him, they tried to get him to say, I'm not like the other blacks. I'll just be the only one here, but so what? And my brother would not agree to that. He said no. And so when he got this recording, he let him know that he had the recording. And so what they did was they tried to get him, pay him off, send him on a jet plane to Germany and tell him what all they could do for him because he made this invention and everything. So they said no. My brother told him, no, I want you to promote the other blacks. You're going to, and in fact, he even told me, quote, unquote, Todd, I got Volkswagen by the balls. And I said, you're playing a dangerous game. And I used to call him baby brother, but his name was Bill Brock. I said, you're playing a very dangerous game. They could kill you. You need to leave. Forget them people because they were not working along with my brother. And it just made me mad because his heart was for the minorities at the plant. He wanted to help them. He knew that he was leaving. He had acquired $9 million. He called the family meeting and asked the family to help him with this hotel, but he wanted to resolve that the problem there at the plant before he left.
And I'd like
And
to
I,
interject. Let me jump in there real quick.
mm-hmm,
For those of you who are watching from the city of Pittsburgh right now, I have to admit it's very disheartening that when I built that website, okay, um, I'd spoken with many of my father's former employees, but when I would ask for their help for things to share with me, what are some of the things that they endured? They told me flat out, I can't help you because I got a family. And I said, wait a minute. My father had a family too, and he died for you. Well, we know he didn't kill himself. Well, if you know he didn't kill himself, even the attorney Burt Brown for the VW Black Caucus, he looked me dead in my eye and told me, "You better leave this case alone before what happened to your father happens to you." And I told him, "Well, if you
exactly.
committed suicide, that ain't gonna happen to me." And he said,
And
"Well,
caucus members actually at the funeral came to the funeral and tried to talk to me. I was really upset. And what they did was they apologized at to me at the funeral. I didn't want to hear any apologies or anything because they knew what they did was they overstepped him and put his life in danger by doing that. So, you know, it the fact that I know that my brother did not commit suicide, number one, it was the religion that we grew up, and also he had his black belt in 10 degrees. He had his black belt in 10 degrees. And so a person who learns how to fight and defend herself would never kill himself anyway because he loved life. He wanted to live. He didn't want to die. When I went to the hospital and saw him laying there with a bullet in the right side of his head, I started screaming at him. I said, "Babe, brother, did you kill yourself? Did you shoot yourself? Why did you shoot yourself? You told me you would never commit suicide." And a tear ran down the side of his face. He was fighting, and the doctor said he was fighting to live. He had a bullet in his head, and they had to pull the plug. And I didn't know that the plug had been pulled. He was actually fighting to live. Does the person who commits suicide fight to live? No, I don't think so. You know?
coupled with the fact that he hadn't found me yet, he was still looking for me."
And so the handwriting, TW, you didn't finish telling them the fact that let me explain this. It was a letter on the bed where my brother was shot in the bedroom.
Actually, it
And
was in
it
the floor.
said, "Dear world, I am your leader. Maybe you should consider me." And I looked at that note. I said, "What?" I said, "This is first of all, that was the letter was not his handwriting because he was left-handed. He used to turn the page upside down to write, and it looked like scribble scratch. You know how people say when a doctor writes, you can't understand? His handwriting was worse than a doctor. He would hand me notes to type up for him. And so I knew his handwriting very well. So I told everybody, I said, this is not his handwriting. And he would never write something this silly. Dear world, I'm your leader. Maybe you should consider it. I said, that's not a suicide note. And it's not my brother's handwriting. So TW took it further and went to a handwriting analyst to have the handwriting analyzed to see if my brother wrote it, and tell them what he told you about the handwriting, TW.
Well, he said that my father didn't write the letter, and he also said that he's willing to prove it in court. But I've got to get to court, and I've taken several steps over the years to do just that. I've gone to the FBI. I've gone to local, state, and city government for their help, and they tell me, "Oh, we're going to help you. We're going to help you." And when I ask them, "Well, what steps are you going to take?" They won't give me the steps that they're going to take. But for those who are following along, go to the website and look under the Our Supporter page. You'll see all the different people who have sent letters to Congress to get the Justice Department involved, to no avail. I mean, you know, when I went to the FBI, I was told by I have some associates in some high places too, and a friend of mine told me that the reason why the FBI won't do anything about it is because you don't have enough people talking about it. Hence, that's where you, my listening audience, comes in. I would like you to talk about it. Help me talk about it. Let's talk about it. See,
this has been one of the most painful things that ever happened to me. I have never gotten over the death of my brother, and I had to back off because it started getting to the point, because this is exactly what my brother said to me before he died. He said, "Top, you know I'm in a battle." He said, "And I got a gun in my hand, shooting it." He said, "If the gun gets knocked out of my hand, would you pick the gun up and continue the battle?" And I said, "Yes, I definitely would." And what hurts is I tried to pick the gun up and to continue the battle, but there's no one around, no attorney,
court system, right?
no person who investigates deaths. No one has accepted it because it's highly political thing. And
you know what,
I
Anton,
was
I'm
told
going to jump in
many
and say
times,
you are
leave it
absolutely
alone
right.
before you get found dead. And I also told TW that, you know, I don't want him to die because he's trying to prove that my brother did not commit suicide.
Well, I want to jump in and say this, Anton. Let me jump in and say this.
Okay.
I've had 3 attorneys take my case, and for some mysterious reason, I don't know if the NSA knocked on their door. I don't know, but they just fell off. They stopped. They never called me again. And so one day I was in Pennsylvania, and I was talking to a Pennsylvania state trooper. I don't remember that trooper's name, but I was talking to this gentleman. I told him about the facts of my father's case, and he says, "I'm going to look into it for you." He said, he gave me his personal number. Said, "Give me a couple of days. I'm gonna look into it for you." A few days later, he calls me back. He said, "Man, this case is deeper than you think. Your father definitely didn't commit suicide." And he gave me his personal cell phone number. And he said, "We're gonna get to the bottom of this." He said, "You make sure you stay on top of me because I'm gonna follow up with you on this." So 2 days turned into 2 weeks, turned into way too long. I hadn't heard from the guy. So at that point, I got angry, and I called the colonel of the Pennsylvania State Police. At the time, was Colonel Miller. And I told him about what this officer told me and what happened, And so Colonel Miller says, "Well, give me a couple of days. I'm going to look into it and I'll get back to you." Colonel Miller calls me back a few days later. He says, "I can't help you because this case is out of my jurisdiction." I said, wait a minute. You're the Pennsylvania State Police. So let me just make sure that I understand you clearly. I said, so he said, I can't help you. It's out of my jurisdiction. I said, okay, so I just want to make sure we're clear. I said, so if I took a gun and I went to the area where this took place in Pennsylvania, and I put a gun to one of your officers' head and pulled the trigger, you mean tell me you couldn't arrest me because it's out of your jurisdiction? He said, sir, I can't help you. And he hung up the phone on me. What that suggested to me is somebody above his head said, leave this thing alone.
Yeah, you already know what they would have done to you. And the same thing should have been done to the people you're talking about.
That's right.
Just to touch base with the listening audience, this is an expose show. It's an expose show by Mr. T.W. Brock. Mr. T.W. Brock is the son of Mr. William Brock. Mr. William Brock was a black man, a black gentleman that was hired by a major corporation back in the 70s.
July 1977, and was killed.
A black man that was hired by a major corporation back in the 70s, the late 70s. He was hired to correct the racial wrongs that were being done or committed by the major corporation. He was hired for that position. This is his family, and they are saying that the major corporation gave him that position so that he would be a sitting duck. But he took that position and actually made some headway and started correcting some of the wrongs that were being committed against the black race, like hanging nooses in the
hanging black dolls from nooses in the doorway. They would walk in the doorway, find black dolls and hanging from nooses. They found, I don't like the N word, but if you go on the website, if you look at the blue link that says abuse by VW, right there on the homepage, that's those were applications that minorities would find on their desks when they'd come to work in the morning.
We'll get into that. I've seen the applications before, and so when I saw TW present them to me, I was like, "Wow, this really happened." I saw it like in, when you go to encyclopedias or something. I think I saw it in an encyclopedia one time, and then when you showed it to me, I was like, "Wow, that really happened." So, but back to the point, y'all. Back to the subject at hand. This show is an expose show about this gentleman's father and this lady's brother. He was put in a position at a major corporation to go in and bridge the gap. Touch on racial inequalities within major corporation. Once he got positioned at this major corporation, the company took his life. They took his life because he was going against the grain and doing things that they did not want him to do. They also killed him because they wanted to shut him up. He had evidence on this major corporation, and that is what this show is about. I just don't want the listening audience listening in and saying, "Man, what are they talking about? It sounds deep, but I don't know what they're talking about." This is T.W. Brock. He is the son of a murdered father. That is what this show is about. It is called Partners of Purpose. T.W. Brock and his family are looking for partners of purpose. They want the community, blacks, whites. They want Capitol Hill. They want city councilmen. Yes. They want everybody to join forces with him, join forces with his family to shed light on this problem, number one, and number two, protect his father's legacy, and number three, quite possibly take this to court and get the word overturned that he committed suicide. Get that overturned, and now they want to call it a murder, which it sounds like it was.
Absolutely. Real
Talk 100 Radio is on the outside looking in. T.W. Brock called us and he said, "I need help." I said, "What do you need help with?" He said, "My father was murdered." He broke it all down to me like I'm breaking it down to you in much more detail. And I was so intrigued. I was just like, Lisa, we got to do this. We got to do this. You know, sometimes controversy is good, sometimes controversy is bad. And I just felt like for the community, this is a good thing. This is a good thing because, stand up again for me. This is what the show is all about. TW will be selling shirts just like this. And he believes, and a lot of people believe, that America takes some of our own. They took, as you noticed, all these people aren't black. They've taken whites from us, they've taken blacks from us. And TW wants it to come to an end, and he wants his father to be at the forefront of it. The forefront of the whole movement. Is that correct, TW?
That is correct.
Am I hitting the hammer on the
You're
nail?
hitting the hammer on the nail. I'd like to maybe one day have Barack Obama or Michelle Obama, since they went to Harvard Law School. Hey, let them come aboard. Let them be a part of this project. Maybe we because they ain't gonna go after them. I doubt very seriously they go after them.
This is a major movement, and we want the entire community behind TW and behind his father. We have to close tonight within the next 5 minutes. And I want, in that 5 minutes, I want TW and Auntie Tot. I keep saying her name wrong.
My real name is Hycela.
Tatila, okay.
Hycela.
Auntie Tot and TW. Let's close out the show by telling our listening audience what you are on the show for tonight, Auntie Tot, and what you want to gain from the community via this show. Let's start with your aunt.
Okay. At this point, there's still racism. Racism is going on in a real subtle manner, and people don't recognize that racism still exists. I want to fight racism with everything I have, based on what happened to my brother. This could happen again. And this is a country that is supposed to practice justice. And I'd like to see my brother get justice for his death. And I'd like to see other blacks become aware and unite together like other races do and help each other out and talk it over. A lot of people are going through racism right now and they're all alone, don't know what to do. Join together as a force and to help other people overcome racism. And, there's nothing worse than death to me. And I lost a very important person and I loved him. And I would like to see that others become aware of what is going on in this country and help bring it to an end.
Once and for all. Bring
Once
racism.
and for all, you're right.
Mhm.
People
Yes,
keep saying when Obama became president that racism was over. That's not true.
No,
Half
ma'am.
of this country is racist. And they need to be made aware that they can't linger on with this racism and do things that end people's death for no reason. Good people. And so they need to be made aware that this racism has to go.
Before I hand the microphone to, thank you, Auntie Tot. Before I hand the microphone to TW, I say all the time that I wish when they have these hate crimes, and I'm going to touch on another subject that we're not going to expound on tonight, but I believe that there are not only white racists, I believe there are also black racists.
That's right.
And I believe that
Exactly.
when crimes are committed against each race and they are labeled hate crimes, I believe that those people should be exiled somewhere on some island out in the middle of nowhere, so they can, so they can,
You're right.
so they can perpetuate racism all by their lonesome, and leave us out of it.
You know what? I'll throw this in real quick. The best thing that Harriet Tubman, I'm sure everybody knows about Harriet Tubman. She ran and got the slaves and set them free. But there were other blacks who told on her and tried to. So what she had to do, she started shooting those blacks who wanted to go back and tell what she was doing. And I believe, what you said about exiling, there are racist black people too.
Yes,
They
sir.
have been brainwashed and they actually think that, you know, minorities are terrible people. Let me go to this race or that race. And so those people need to be exiled. And people need to know, number one, who they are. They need to be exposed for, the things that they do against their own race.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. TW, reach
Well,
out to our listening audience and tell them what you want from the community, from community leaders,
Mhm.
from the powers that be on Capitol Hill,
Mhm.
from ex-President Barack Obama and Michelle Obama. What do you want via this show? What do you want to get?
awesome. All right. Now you didn't, man. What I'd like to see, and what I'm willing to work to achieve, is POP, Partners of Purpose. I want to partner with other minorities, with other people, not just minorities, with other people, period, who desire to see change, who are willing to do the work to achieve that change. See, I'm also, I'm of a Christian. I'm of the Christian faith, and the Bible says faith without works is dead. I'd like to partner with other ministries, other churches, not the ones who go around preaching God said he would, because I'm here to tell you he won't. What he will do is he'll give us the strength and the power and the ability so that we can come together and work together to achieve a goal. If we don't do the work, it won't get done. I'd like to see us come together and teach our young people the importance of getting involved so that we can influence change, because change comes from work, and work comes from, it comes from the willingness to partner with people who are of the same mindset. Hey, let's get this done. So that's what I want to achieve from my listening audience. So I'd like to partner with other artists because I'm a poet. I write some really nice poetry. I wrote the poem on the back of this shirt. It's entitled "America, Why Do You Kill Your Own?" I'd like to see. I'd like to partner with other artists, other rappers who can turn my poetry into raps, so we can begin to rap about my father and who he was and what it meant. And maybe put together some reggae, because I love me some reggae. I love reggae gospel. Colleen Davis, if you can hear me, you my favorite. But those are some of the things I'd like to do, and I'm open to ideas that others may bring to the table as well.
Okay. There you have it, y'all. This was the first show of Partners with Purpose.
Of
Partners of Purpose. I'm sorry. P.O.P. Partners of Purpose is the name of this show. If you would like to be a POP, if you would like to be a partner of purpose, all you have to do is what, TW?
reach out to me at 833, toll free 833. Do it for POP. Or reach out to me on Facebook. Because partner with me on Facebook. My it's TW Brock, and let's talk about some ideas. Let's talk about what you bring to the table, and let's make it happen. You reach me on Facebook, TW Brock, or reach out to me toll free 833. Do it for POP, and let's get started.
What does it take to be a partner of purpose? It takes you having the mentality to create change. Change what, you might ask? Change the mentality in America as it pertains to racism, A lot of people think racism is gone. It no longer exists. But we know it still does. It's still here. It's still running rampant throughout our society, throughout our communities. Hell, your next door neighbor might be racist. And we're going to touch on that throughout the show, that racism is not only perpetuated by whites,
That's right.
it's also perpetuated by blacks. So we need to bring this all to a head and end it. And it's all centered around Mr. William Brock. Mr. William Brock's life was taken from him in 1983.
January the 8th.
January 8th, 1983. His life was taken from him by a major corporation, and Mr. T.W. Brock and his family think that the government helped in covering it up. That is what this show is about. We want you guys to tune in every Friday night. We went over tonight on time because of things that couldn't be handled, couldn't be solved. But we want you to tune in every Friday night from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m.
6 p.m. to 7 p.m.
All you have to do to tune in is come to our live feed on Real Talk 100 Radio. We will have a Partners of Purpose page. You will be able to click in and listen live on the Partners of Purpose page. You can go to YouTube. We're live streaming on YouTube right now. And you can go to our website, because I know some of you at work and can't watch a video, but you can put an earphone in your ear. The boss will never know you're listening to Partners of Purpose.
Until you become a pop.
Until you become a pop. This was the first show, the first installment of Partners of Purpose. And T.W. Brock and his family want Partners of Purpose that want to help end racism, not just talk about it.
That's right.
And the whole story is behind Mr. William Brock, a murdered father. This is his son, and you have witnessed his family, Auntie Tot. Hopefully she'll be back on the show. Nice meeting you, ma'am.
Nice meeting you too. Thank you for having us on the show.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. We're going to do all we can to help him. Y'all stay tuned to Real Talk 100 Radio. Almost every day we have something interesting to talk about. Almost every day we have great music to listen to. Keep it locked to Real Talk 100 Radio and become a pop every Friday night. We'll see y'all next week. Good night.
Good night.